Guys, today I'm going to show you how to make these beautiful Snapdragon flowers. I post on Instagram, so check me out at Eleanor. I also have more classes on my website. Let's start by preparing the paper. To get strength without texture, we're going to fuse 2 layers of 90-gram crepe paper together. We start by taking a piece of 90-gram crepe paper and stretching it out to be double its size. Fold the stretched paper in half so the paper grain runs vertically. We need to cut a piece of fusible interfacing to fit between our layers. This is the kind of thing you can get at sewing shops. I bought this stuff off AliExpress. The easiest way to do this is to just cut around the paper. It doesn't have to be a perfect fit. Open up the layers and then put the fusible interfacing in between. So take some baking paper and cover the front and back of your crepe paper. This will stop the fusible interfacing from ruining your ironing board and your iron. Trust me, I learned this the hard way. It doesn't have to be baking paper, but basically something that you don't mind getting glue on to stop it from going through to your ironing board. Put your iron on a high setting, no steam, and iron the paper so the fusible interfacing fuses the 2 pieces of paper together. In this example, my iron is not on. What you'll end up with is a super thick piece of paper. So peel the paper out, cut off any excess glue, and you'll be left with a really thick piece of crepe paper. Next, we're going to add some colour. I'm using tin foil to protect the surface I'm working on. Again, you could use plastic if you prefer. I spray the paper with isopropyl alcohol, which will act as a blender for the alcohol ink. I'm using alcohol ink because it doesn't fade and it's very vibrant and it's actually really easy to use. So today I'm going to go for a deep purple colour. I then used a paintbrush to blend the ink through the paper. I'm fine with it being blotchy, it doesn't have to be even. If you want to, you can do the other side as well. So leave that to dry. It won't take long because it's alcohol. I'm also going to make a more pale purple colour of paper. I do this by adding isopropyl alcohol to a bowl with a small amount of ink and mixing them together. As you can see, I've covered my bowl in Glad wrap to protect it from getting stained. Again, you can leave that to dry somewhere. I also made a green piece using the same techniques that I've showed you. So now we'll create the flower. So this is the structure of the Snapdragon flower. In this example, I'm going to use the dark purple paper for the top half of the flower. Fold the paper in half and cut out the Snapdragon top petal shape that is in your template kit. Using Aleene's sticky glue, I glue 3 pleats into the base of the petal. This makes the base of the petal nice and narrow and still makes sure we can have lots of room for stretch in the top half of the petal. The pleats allow the base of the petal to be narrow, but allow us to stretch the petal in the future. Deeply stretch the top of the petal where I've indicated to stretch on the template. Next, we're going to create the base of the flower. So fold a piece of paper in half and cut the flower bottom shape, which you'll find in your template kit. Deeply stretch the petal. You also want to stretch out each of the wings so they have some life and aren't completely flat. And you also need to add a crease to the wings so they stick out prominently from the base. So now we're going to create the flower structure. Here I'm cutting a piece of 3-inch long 22 gauge wire to build our flower around. I take a piece of 2-ply toilet paper and fold it in half. Cut the piece down so it's about 1 inch wide. And if you're cunning, you can use multiple pieces from the same piece of paper. I'm adding glue to the top and the bottom so that when I roll the wire around, it actually stays in place. Then we're going to wrap that toilet paper in a piece of light crepe paper or the same colour as the base of your flower. Round off the top of the paper. You'll also want to twist the square base so that it connects with your wire. Fold the tip of the padded paper up. So we're going to use this padded piece to form the structure needed for the flower base. We can glue the bottom petal to the structure to create a complex shape. So putting the flower together. Add glue to the folded down tip of your pad as well as the top side. Glue the petal bottom to the pad as shown. Push the face of the petal bottom so that it is more flat. Pleat each side of the petal bottom to emphasize a round shape. We're making a complex shape, so be patient, it may take a while to get it right. Make sure to pause this video to have a good look at the structure of the ones I've demonstrated and check out the drawings that I put into the instructions where I've tried to really show how this looks from the underside and where the pleats are. You want to round the front of the petal so the wings are almost facing downwards. Glue the top petal to the bottom. A final touch is to add a calyx to the base of the flower. Here I'm using a piece of my green crepe paper that you saw me dye earlier, and the template that is in your template kit. Here I'm just making sure that my calyx fits all the way around before I glue it. And as you can see, the largest part of the calyx is right at the top back of the flower, and the smaller points roll to the front. I'm also going to wrap a strip of green crepe paper around the flower wire to hide that. And that's the flower all finished. Next up, let's make some smaller buds. So let's create a flower that's about to bloom. In my flowers, I think I used about 9 of each that you're seeing on the screen, so 18 in total. So prepare another set of top and bottom petals as well as another petal structure. Don't stretch out the bottom petal wings or fold them just yet. Add glue to the underside of the petal base after you've cupped it. Tuck the petal structure inside the cupped bottom petal as we did before, but this time glue down the wings starting with the middle one and then the ones on each side. So your petal base is actually folded up yet to actually bloom. So prepare the top the same way as you did before. Glue the petal structure to the top petal, but this time the petal bottom is upside down. Again, prepare a calyx for the large bud, the same as last time. And then the same again, wrapping the stem to hide the wire. Now let's make a smaller bud. Cut a wire about 2 to 3 inches long and take another 2-piece of ply and cut the piece into quarters. Adding a little bit of glue to the top of one of the corners and putting my wire on it. And I'm moulding that toilet paper strip into a bud shape. And then take a strip of the top petal colour and wrap it around the bud. I think my flowers used about 8 buds in the colour and in green, so you probably want about 16 to 20 in total. If you want to, you can add a calyx to the bud. After I made this flower a few times, I stopped adding the calyx to the bud because I thought it didn't really make any difference, but if you're a perfectionist, you can put it on. Again, we want to hide that wire in a strip of green paper. This doesn't need to be much because the majority of the wire is not going to be exposed, so you can preserve your green crepe paper by only wrapping probably the top inch if you would like. And that's how you make a small bud. So you can also make these in green using the same method, and that's kind of showing the graduation of colour as it goes down the flower. Finally, we need to make some tiny buds to sit right at the top of the flower. Take some small pieces of crepe paper and form them into tiny buds. I think a piece 1 inch wide by maybe 2 inches high is a good size, but I just use scraps. I also used pliers to make sure that the piece of scrap had a good pointy end, just so it looked more like a bud. And I think I made about 10 of these. Finally, putting it all together. We will use a 22 gauge wire to build the flower stem around. So we'll use strips of green crepe paper to wrap the tiny buds to the stem. Now getting started is always quite fiddly, and I would have probably found it easier if I had just left the top to dry before I pushed forward, but I was filming and I wanted to get it all done in one shot, so just let it dry and you'll have an easier time. So place the tiny buds in a cluster that starts to move down the wire. Yeah, I would have found this easier if I'd left it to dry. It was quite frustrating. You need to make sure that it's properly glued to the wire so it doesn't just slide off. Once the glue is dried, press the buds down so they stick out at odd angles less. So you just want it all facing in the same direction as much as possible. So now we will transition to our bigger buds by adding the green small buds that we've got. So I'm placing the bud right under the tiny buds so that it's a very clear transition from the smallest size to a bigger one. But I'm not particularly caring where I put the buds. Now let's start adding some colour. Let's put our coloured small buds on the stem. So after we've done that, we can add our large buds. So as I said before, I used about 10 tiny buds and then 8 small buds in green and pink, and I made about 9 tiny buds. Blooming buds, the larger ones. So I'm placing these quite low down so I can keep them pointed up. That's just to avoid a really rough transition because our small buds are a lot smaller than these. So we disguise that by having the large buds pointing upward, and gradually as we put them on the flower we'll start to point them further down. Now what I'm doing here is I like to wrap the strip over as well as under a piece of wire that I'm adding, and that just gives it a really nice look. Sometimes you find that the flower rips between the stem you've added and the main stem. So this just ties everything together and just looks a lot better as a finished result. It's not always easy to do it though, so you'll see me do it sometimes and other times I just can't be bothered. So I just put a group of 3 on, and I tended to work in groups of 3 When I'm making a lot of flowers at once, sometimes I will change up that pattern so they don't all look exactly the same as each other. And you can see with these ones I'm adding now, they're not pointed up as much as the last set. So we're starting to get more of a filling out shape on the stem. So now we can add our flowers. So I would give each flower stem a bit of a bend before you start to wrap, because you can't really put these straight up. And again, I think here I'm wrapping in sets of 3 around the base of the stem. Another 3 flowers. That pink just looks so vibrant in the video. It's really cool. It does look nice in real life as well. Now I had a few more flowers lying around, and you can use your judgment about how many you want to add, because it does take a long time to make each flower, and you might want to make some smaller ones. I do have a tendency to make really big flowers when I make them, but you could definitely settle for what I had before I started adding this layer. So I had 2 large buds left, so I decided to put them at the base of the flower stem. You know, sometimes at the bottom of the flowers you are left over with flowers that didn't bloom and things like that, so I thought it was a little bit realistic. And then finish off the stem with some green crepe paper and you're done. I definitely think it's worth considering making flowers that are a lot shorter, specifically if it's going into a bouquet, because you probably won't see it anyway, and the flowers that are smushed against other flowers might just get lost in the mix. So I hope you enjoyed this Snapdragon video. I made this in lots of fabulous colours, and obviously it's a lot of fun when you can play with colour, and having a two-tone flower is always quite exciting. So check out my other tutorials and follow me on Instagram. I'd love to hear how you go.